This is the Power Producers Podcast, where we are refining and redefining the sales game.
Rule number one is you have to believe in yourself. You're the only one who doesn't think you belong in this appointment. The prospect has already validated your existence by scheduling time with you. Get it through your head you belong here, go in there, crush it, and close the deal.
A place where sales professionals can come to learn from other sales professionals and thought leaders that have mastered their craft.
The difference between a good salesperson and a best-in-class salesperson is only 2 minutes. By spending an extra 2 minutes on what you might think is a mundane task in the sales game, you separate yourselves from the pack, you grow your book of business, you close more deals, and you retain your accounts.
As well as their peers who are still striving for perfection to achieve their why.
I have a wife and 4 kids. Failure is not an option.
Real sales professionals, real stories, real results. Are you ready to feel the power?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Power Producers Podcast, where we are refining and redefining the sales game. And you might have thought you had plenty of Gertha Jean for coming on the podcast the first time. I'm bringing you double trouble. In fact, I'm bringing you the person who really makes things happen at One Way Insurance Group. And they're coming straight from the back of that ridiculous insurance van that I have seen all over social. So it's my pleasure to welcome for the first time to the Power Producers Podcast, the real gasoline in the one-way engine, Ms. Gertha Jean, Gertha's wife. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say, for the first time ever, my co-host is my oldest son, Grayson. The first time on the podcast is as a co-host. I've been running solo for the first 2 episodes, and I decided that I wanted help on this one, and then I'll close out the next one by myself. So before we get cracked up, what's going on up there?
Everything is good.
Yeah.
Everything is good. It's good to be on the podcast.
So talk
Last
to me.
time I wasn't on it.
No, I know. Well, and we can get into all the reasons why. Eben's told me he didn't want you on. I'm just kidding. He never said
You trying to get me in trouble, Dave?
I know, man. I have a feeling you do a pretty good job on your own, man. I don't think you need anything from me. So before we get into all of that, though, sort of give everybody your background, because I know we talked about it a little bit when he was on, but I don't know, we didn't really get to hear much about you other than you're from a completely different area in the Caribbean than what he is, right? Which I think is interesting in and of itself. So sort of tell everybody your backstory and what led you to where you're at right now. And then we're going to get into talk a little bit about the agency, but I want to talk a lot about the community that you're in and what y'all are doing there. And I want to talk, and I do seriously want to talk about what your vision is and your goals are for the vehicle, because I mean, ain't no secret who owns it. I mean, it's all over it. So floor is yours.
A little bit about myself. I'm originally from the Bahamas, Nassau, born and raised. So I'm an island girl who can't swim, so don't hold it against me. I know, surrounded by water and can't swim. My parents are Haitian. They migrated from Haiti to the Bahamas for a better life. I basically grew up with an entrepreneurial spirit. I don't know if anybody who's from like a different country besides the United States, like it was born in you. Like when you came out your mother's womb, like boom, you're an entrepreneur.
Well, I mean, if they don't think that's the case, then they should go visit some of those islands sometime, because you're going to get sold everything and anything you could possibly imagine. I mean, I could probably buy a baby in some islands from some of these. But it's funny, and Grayson can even relate to that, because we go on cruises with the family during the holidays, either at Thanksgiving time or Christmas time each year. COVID slowed that down, but we're back on track to do that again this year. And I mean, I'll never forget the first time that Grayson and my middle son, who were old enough to kind of start paying attention to what's going on when you're somewhere new, every 3 steps, somebody was wanting to braid Caroline's hair, or they had a doll they wanted to sell you that they made, or this or that. And, I think that makes people who don't come from that very uncomfortable. Honestly, it doesn't bother me one way or the other. I walk through and I'll typically give them pointers on how they could break the ice better or how they're going to get, I'll just say, hey man, your approach is all wrong. You see me here with my 4 kids. This is how you should open the conversation. But I do think that it's something that's you're dead on the money. You're born with it. It's cultural. And, I think
it's survival.
It is. You took the words out of my mouth. Part of it is you have to do that to be able to eat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the insurance thing's a piece of cake, right?
compared
to that.
Well, that's what I thought. I actually came to the States when I was 19. I got a scholarship from a church program. So I worked with them for a couple of years. And then I went to college. And during that time, there was an agency broker that was saying that, we need filing in the office. If you can just come in and do some filing. And then from there, I started doing some filing. And they were like, hey, can you translate for some of our clients? And then from there, I started doing some translating, and bada bing, bada boom. Before you knew it, I was selling insurance, and that was about 13 years ago. I've always been independent, never been captive, and it's something that I grew to love. And then after meeting events, and he got the insurance industry. After being in the insurance industry, working for other people for a couple of years, we decided to open our own, and here we are.
So that's interesting. So Evans decides to get into insurance. How much of it was because he was looking for a wife and wanted to impress her? And how much of it was because he was going to marry her and she said, you better get yourself a real job, buddy?
I'll let you answer that.
Oh man, no, actually, she's the one. She was the one that actually got me into it, because I know, like, in my early years, like, I know about insurance because I had a side hustle doing employee benefit. But when I got with Gigi, and she was like, you should get into it, go get your license. She even invested in me to get the license, and it took me, as people know, it took me quite some time for me to pass the license, because she invests so much in me. It took me 11 times to pass the license. And I couldn't give up. I always tell the story, I couldn't give up because she invests so much in me. I couldn't give up. I had to keep going, because I know, like, the goal, the dream that we had together. So I couldn't give up. And here we are, 5 years, going 5 years in with our agency, and we've been blessed. Well, we've been blessed of what we accomplished so far, but we're not done yet. We're not done yet.
And the funny thing too, David, is even though I've been in the insurance industry longer than events, a lot of people think that I just got my license. One person even went to events like, oh, it's a good thing that you put your wife into this. I'm like, what you talking about? I've been doing this.
she's the CEO of the firm. Yeah. Like, no, people don't know that. That's why, like, she's the one that got me into it. She was the one.
Yeah, but that's a problem in my opinion, because that's a bias that the industry has in general, because I typically correct people when I'm engaging with them, whether it be social or otherwise. I even put something up last week on my personal Facebook page, and I don't even remember exactly what it was, but it was something about either a producer or an agency owner. And you know what it was? It was a comment. It was a message that I had gotten from somebody in Killing Commercial thanking me for just motivating them and supporting them. And it was the best thing I got the entire day. And I made a quick anonymous post about it. There was no gender identifying remarks whatsoever in the post. Now, it did come from a guy. It came from a man.
Yeah.
But when I posted it, I didn't put anything in there that would lead anybody to believe anything one way or the other. Not intentionally, because I was trying to catch somebody acting in a way, but that's how it was written, and it was a natural thing. And literally, like, one of the very first comments was something that said, I'd love to know about him or his, this, that, or the other. And my first remark is, how do you know it was a guy?
Yeah, yeah.
Right. But that's where our mind goes. That, I mean, and that's something that has always sort of bothered me. And I don't think it's not relegated to the insurance industry, which is even worse. I think that we see it a lot because it's really, really prevalent, right? If you're not aging white dude in a conference, then you're a minority right out of the box.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who you are. And so, I think that it's interesting you say that. And I pointed out for the listeners intentionally to tell you, be a little bit sensitive to who you're talking to. You never know whether it's the husband or the wife or both that own the agency. And just because, they're doing this as a couple doesn't mean one is any less than the other. I can assure you, if my wife was in the agency with me, which I would love for her to be one day, I would give her all the credit, right? And you're a smart guy. You do the same thing, but she would never allow me to do that. And she wouldn't take all the credit because she knows that both of us have to work together.
Yes.
But I wanted to bring that up because you said it just in passing, like it's a normal thing. And that's the problem. It's a normal thing. And people say too many things like that in passing. And then we hear it and we sit back and we think about it a little bit later. I'd rather bring it up as it happens. So thank you for sharing that, because whoever said that to you needs to get racked in the head.
Right?
Very true.
Yeah. So anyhow, so you bring Ebens in after 11, after 11 times he passes the test. That's still not the record, brother. I know somebody who's taken the Florida test more times than that before they passed it. But again, it's always a matter of perspective and how people view the world. You could say that, and there are probably people snickering under their breath thinking, oh, this guy's stupid. It took him 11 times to pass the test. I tend to look at it a little differently and say, this dude took a test a 12th time after he didn't pass at 11 because he wasn't willing to give up and quit.
Yes.
And he wanted to go get what's his, which tells me a lot, right? Because I can tell you, I've not been in the homes or the houses where you grew up, but I've been to both of the islands enough times that I know what conditions are like there compared to what it's like for the average person in the United States. Or we could even compare it to some of the worst conditions in the US, and the US is still in better shape than a lot of the other countries, that are out there. And so, my opinion is you didn't quit because you don't know how to. That wasn't an option.
No,
Quitting was never something that was on the table. And I mean, I even remember things like, I believe it or not, I'm relatively musically inclined. I took piano lessons for a number of years. I play brass instruments, and I don't even know that I've ever even talked about on the podcast before, and haven't in a long time. But I remember all of those times where, it got beat into my head practicing the piano every single day, that I had to go for an hour, and I'd sit down for 10 minutes, get frustrated and want to quit. And I was forbidden to get up from the piano because I hadn't mastered what I needed to learn that day. And I would end up going for an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours to get it right before I would ever give in. But I looked at the time, I hated that. I hated the fact that my parents were doing that to me. But I look at it now, and it's really become woven in the fabric of who I am, because I don't quit at anything anymore.
Yeah.
And, even the most mundane things, right? There's plenty of things in our industry that we don't want to have to deal with or do on a daily basis. But if we want to achieve what we're capable of achieving in this industry, sometimes we gotta deal with the stuff we don't want to do.
Very true. Very true. What you say?
So you come through college, you bring Ebens into the business. What's that look like?
The first few years was rough. Well, we started in 2019 when we opened our doors. The first 2 years was rough because we knew how to sell insurance. We knew about the product, we knew about it. But I mean, as being agency principals, that we didn't know. So a lot of stuff we had to learn. We made a lot of mistakes. We made a lot of sacrifices. There was nobody to turn to. There was no David. There was no Mick. There was no Ngozi. It was just us. And everybody that we turned to would not help us or tell us what to do. So a lot of stuff that we had to learn the hard way, like how the loss ratio affects your book of business and how to get a book of business and finding the right clients, finding your niche market. So a lot of these things, it was really hard for us the first few years, but we learned from it. And I think it made our agency much better.
So not to make you relive the painful moments of your journey, but part of having the podcast is to share some of the things that we have done collectively that were mistakes that might help somebody else to hear not to do that, right?
Yeah.
For example, I can give you one that cost me $25,000 when I didn't have $25,000. I bound an excess and surplus lines policy for somebody who was a trusted client and relationship of mine who ended up hosing me on the down payment, going out of business, and I was on the hook.
Wow.
Right. So now David doesn't he doesn't bind.
Yes.
Without having cash in hand. Right. So that's something, no matter how pressured you are to get a deal done, it can come back and blow you up. So what's an example of something when you say you made mistakes, and you don't need to give me like all the bad ones, but I mean, what's something that you learned that you weren't expecting?
We actually lost a trip and a bonus because of the loss ratio. When I mean the loss ratio is that, you know, when you start the agency, like you taking in everybody and anybody that you taking.
If they got a pulse, we were writing you.
We were writing you. Now, if you had a business, we were writing you. If you had a home, we was writing you. If you had a vehicle, we was writing. So we didn't have that. We didn't know our clientele. We didn't know our niche with that because we was writing everybody and anybody. It hurt our loss ratio. We missed out on a big bonus and a trip from one of our top carriers because of that. And from that day, we learned. We quickly adjust, and we had to find a way. Like, okay, we had to look back, okay, to see how did we get to this far? What did we do wrong? We had to go back to the drawing board to see how can we adjust what we have to do now. And we did that, and we found out that it's not the client. It always is not the client fault. It's our fault because we the one that end up writing them. We the one that make the decision, taking them. So we just went to the drawing board and said, you know what? This is our niche client. This is what we're gonna do. This is the qualification. If you want to be a client, this is what we're looking for.
And then also learn to say no, because the past few years we've said more no's than yeses. You know, so even though it may be a good account or whatever, but if I'm looking at certain things, certain red flags and stuff like that, then it's a no. It's a no for me.
Go ahead, Grayson. You started to say something.
I was just going to ask, so with that being said, what were the adjustments that you guys made moving forward to fix that particular mistake you guys made?
One of them, because when we first started, like we was heavily, like we had like personal, like we was heavy on the personal line. So what the adjustment that we did is that we started looking at for the personal line, people who had insurance for more than a year, no speeding ticket, no accident, clean client. We made the adjustment, and with some of the business, like we had a niche, what we were looking for. Now, if you were a general contractor, we know what we was looking for in a general contractor, construction company, or even trucking company. Like we would know what we was looking for, especially with trucking company. Okay, how long you been in business? What's your procedure when you hiring drivers? Now, are you taking any and everybody? So we start doing those little things to help us not to make those mistakes that we made before.
So here's my question, having been in your shoes before. How do you deal with the mental aspects of that, right? Because here you are, you've opened an agency, you know you're under pressure to produce and write as much business as you can. but the loss ratio is running a little hot. And the reality is it may have cost you a trip in year number 1, but if you don't get that fixed, you eventually lose a carrier contract. So now you have to, you're worried about, what am I going to do to preserve my relationship with my insurance company partner, in addition to putting these parameters on? How did you deal with that? What did you say to yourself when you were saying no more than you were saying yes to sort of right the ship and get it to where it needs to be?
Well, I think one thing that we did was, I think when it comes to insurance, a lot of people, it's the education part. And so a lot of our clients, we had to educate them, especially those, if something happens, they hard want to put a claim. Okay, who was at fault? So we went ahead and we educate our clients, before you put that claim in. Another thing that we did is we started the type of niche market that we wanted. We changed our marketing to that specific niche market. So we're like, okay, this is the clients that we want. This is what we need. Let's focus our marketing on that type of client. And so it was easier that way to do the shift. And because we're fairly new, so it didn't really affect our book of business that much because we were new. So we were starting on level ground. So that would help us out a lot. And the funny thing is, because when somebody would ask us about insurance, they're like, what's your niche? I'm like, well, I sell insurance from zero to until they die. That's my niche market. But once we start realizing what our niche was, we realized more of those people were coming to us than ever before. So now I think this year and last year, we're more niche focused, and we're writing the kind of clientele, the kind of businesses that we do want to write.
Got it. Well, I just know how tough it is, because it's easiest thing for me to give advice to a producer about is figure out the 3 to 5 ideal prospects you want to go after, only go after them, and don't look at anything else. Yeah. Well, I can say that now because I've done it, right? And I've made plenty of money doing it. But when you're starting a scratch agency, or you are, a producer who's new and trying to get business on the books, that doesn't always make sense to you. You don't understand it. It wasn't until I got into the agency owner's role that I even paid attention to loss ratio. I would talk about it because I would tell people how bad theirs was, and they needed me to help them get it cleaned up, but I would still go write the account. Part of it's because I knew we had good risk management tools that would get it to where it needed to be. But truthfully, it wasn't because I was only taking the absolute best looking accounts out of everything I had an opportunity on and closing them. I wrote literally everything because all I knew was I needed to get my book to $1 million in revenue as fast as I could, because that's what everybody said made you, that was the holy grail for producers. So I wasn't stopping until I got there. And whatever I wrote. Then, like you, I get involved on the agency side, and it wasn't a trip. It's the fact that we get contingent commissions and profit sharing bonuses from our carriers. Yes. And my goodness, you want to talk, I'll take my own trip. Give me the money. I want that check. I can probably make that money go a lot farther than what the insurance company is going to make it go on a trip. So, that's what was really the wake up call for me, was seeing, oh my goodness. Okay. I didn't realize that these end of the year contingencies were actually as lucrative as what they are. And I'll never forget it, man. I take loss ratio as serious as anybody out there at this point. And I'll never forget the first time auto owners came in after we had been appointed with them for the first year. And they told us what a great year we had, that we were going to get a really good profit sharing check from them. And they were ecstatic that our loss ratio was 12%. And I was pissed. I was mad because it was the first time I had seen it above single digits, because I expected it to be in single digits. And you know what's crazy? It was, because we didn't know any better. I honestly didn't know that I could get profit sharing if my loss ratio was almost 45%.
Yeah.
right? Or whatever the number was. And here I am with the 12, and I was mad. And my marketing guy looks at me and he goes, "What are you upset about? That's one of the best, if not the best, in my entire region." And I said, "I expected it to be single digits." And the moral of the story is sometimes when you don't know any better and you set the goal, don't let anybody else talk noise at you about why you can't do something.
Yeah.
Because what I found in life in general is most people's standards aren't as high for me as what my standards are for me. You know, I'm going to push myself to be the absolute best I can be. I don't want to surround myself with a group of people who say, "Oh man, great job. That's good enough."
Yeah.
Nope.
No, not at all. Grayson, you look like you wanted to ask a question.
Yeah, so I just wanted to bring up the van. I've seen a lot of unique marketing ideas, a lot of unique branding ideas, but I can't say I've ever seen somebody with a van. So just talk to me a little bit about where that came from.
I'm a let her, because Gigi is the one that came up with this crazy idea. Just about 3 years ago. We were just sitting in the office, and she was like, "I have a crazy idea. We should do it. Like, we should have a mobile office." So I'm gonna let her. It was her vision. I back her up with that. So it was her. It was all the credit it's due to her.
She's in good company, because I'm going to tell you what my similar idea was when she's done.
So first of all, I try to correct everybody. It's not a van, it's a mobile office. So everybody's like, "I like your van." I'm like, "It's a mobile office." The idea behind it, Grayson, you're young, right? Well, you're younger than me. I may look young, but I'm not young.
Yeah.
And us being in the insurance industry, we know how fun it is. We know how lucrative it is. But everybody from outside in, I mean, when people talk about aggregate and they talk about limits of liabilities and workers' comp, I'm like, "Oh, yes, it's like me." But then the other person is like, "Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. Break it down for me," right? And so insurance is something that everybody needs, but everybody's afraid of it. Or they're like, "I don't want to handle it. Let somebody else handle it." And so we wanted to create like a safe space where somebody can have that conversation. You know, I can talk to a business owner. I can have a workshop in here. And I wanted to make it cool. And how cool would it be to like pimp my ride out, you know? Like literally you come in here and you don't think of, "Oh my goodness," you don't get that anxiety that I have to purchase a policy. I have to do. You come here and you can ask your questions. You can do whatever you want. There's internet, there's TV in here. So the whole idea behind the mobile office was to make insurance an experience. And also to go ahead and travel to different states, different events, and show people how cool this industry is. And so it's good to see it. You know, everybody who's coming here, they're like, "Wow." So it's really great that this vision came to life.
So where do you take it? Do you just go to neighborhoods and pull over and wait for people to come in? Do you announce that you're going there? Do you make Ebens put on a Chippendales outfit and go out and dance for everybody? Or how's that work?
The process that we have right now is we've taken it to several states. It's been to New Jersey, it's been to PA, Baltimore, Maryland. So what we do, we just don't drive it to like a neighborhood, because you know we got to have a whole plan. We normally, if there's an event that's coming on, we normally connect with the host of the event. We normally sponsor that event as well and have the people come in. We, like in Virginia, we had like a workshop. We did a workshop. So a lot of these things are planned with whoever's hosting the event. And we're there to be there.
And the experience is here's the experience. We want to take the business owner from their conference room to the mobile office. We do the transaction here and everything. And after with the whole transaction, the other cool thing is we're gonna shoot a podcast. We're gonna shoot a podcast inside the mobile office.
So that's been fun.
It's been fun. It's been fun. But people think that we're going to people's houses. No, it's like we want to have that experience for the business owner that live in Maryland. We drive up there. We take you from your conference room to the mobile office, complete everything inside the mobile office.
Well, it doesn't hurt any that your branding's all over the outside. So you're basically driving a billboard everywhere you go, too.
Everywhere we go.
So you could literally just leave that thing parked on the side of a busy street and probably get leads from it, which is good, right? Who wants to buy a billboard when you can buy a mobile office and brand it the way that y'all have done? I think that's a really, really good idea. Let me ask you this, because I think this is a question that probably should be asked more than what it is. But I have to believe, and I'm asking you because I'm not a minority, so I don't know the answer to this other than if I were to ask my friends. But you're in an industry that, as you have admitted, has blessed you, and it hasn't blessed you nearly as much today as it will have in another 10 years, because it's going to continue to build on itself. You know, what are you doing to humanize the insurance industry for minority people in the younger generation, so that when you have the handicap sticker on the mobile office, you got somebody else coming in behind you that can take over, or not even necessarily just at One Way Insurance Group, but in general into the industry? What are you doing? And I know that you're doing things, so I'm not asking you a loaded question. I just want you to share those things with the audience, because I think that's the other thing that's really, really important. And, you know, I'm challenging the minorities on this too, because I listen to a lot of y'all complain out there about how you don't get a voice or you don't get a seat at the table. But I'm also going to tell you, I never hear you do anything except complain about it. You don't ask for a seat at the table. You know who gets a seat at the table? The people who take the test 11 times and pass it on number 12 because they don't want to quit, because they have the guts to come in and ask for a seat at the table. So my question is, for all the people out there that just want to complain about a problem instead of do anything about it, or for the people who aren't a minority that just turn a blind eye to it, what are the things that people can get involved in right now that change the landscape of the insurance industry 10, 15, 20 years down the road by actually making it into something that includes everybody instead of just the same people that it's always included?
I think first things first, representation matters. That's the first things first. And you have to be able to show people that people who look like you are in this industry and are successul.
Hey, I can tell you right now, anybody sees me, fat people everywhere getting into insurance tomorrow.
You can do it, yes. And I think especially when you're young, I think the most important thing is social media. Social media is the best form of how you can reach a wider range of audience, you know, because there's so many people that who've reached out to us because they've seen our posts, they've seen our TikToks. And when you're excited about something, it brings excitement to somebody else. I'm not gonna sit here and be like, yeah, I sell insurance. That's what I do. What's exciting about that? You know, this is what I do. This is what I'm passionate about. So I think representation matters, and that's why we're heavily big into social media. That's why everything that we do, we let people see that we're doing. If it's something for the schools, like we had a group that came a couple of weeks ago who never heard anything about insurance, and we were able to introduce them about insurance. They're like, yo, this is fun. So I think representation matters. One of my mentors, Ngozi and Naji, who have like the Black Friday, who's making a platform where minority agency owners can get contracted with carriers. Because as you know, if you're starting from scratch, like getting an appointment with carriers is like, it ain't gonna happen, you know? But it shows that all these things can be done. It will be done, but I think we have to show it more to people. We have to show people that this is how cool and fun this industry can be.
Definitely. And I see on your social media all the time, you guys are always, and you're wearing the shirt right now, dream chasers or risk takers. And so a question that I had was, when there's people who have these visions and have these dreams for their life, but they don't really know where to begin, what kind of advice would you give to those people who are really ambitious, but just don't know where to start? Because I'm fairly certain that you guys could have chose anything other than insurance, and just based on your mentality, you guys could have found some success in that.
Grayson, you're good. I like it. You're good, Grayson.
Hey, I know his dad.
That question, like, for me, it was association. Now, find a group of people that's doing something that you want to do, and be a part of that. So to me, that's how I got into sell or anything like the Dream Chaser Risk Taker. It's one of my brand, but everything started with association, and I had somebody that believed in me now for me to get where I'm at today. So it started with association, man. Like, if you don't know where to start, hang out with people that's doing great things in the industry that you want to be a part of. To me, it's association. Now, I don't know for you, Gigi, but to me, it's association.
No, I agree with you. I agree. And I think it's good to have like a mentor. It's mentors. I was one of those people who didn't really believe in a mentor. I was like, I'm just gonna wing it. I'm just gonna YouTube it, YouTube University, figure what I gotta figure out. But you don't realize the importance of having a mentor and how that mentor can help you too as well.
Yeah. So another question I actually had was, I mean, right now, just this podcast episode itself shows you guys are always giving credit to each other and always shouting each other out for where you guys have gone. So what would you give for some advice to people who are a couple and they have goals and, you know, they want to go after those and work on those together too? Like, cause, you know, you guys are obviously in a very special situation and you guys are able to become successful together. And I know some people may have questions about that.
I always say,
hey, he's throwing the heat. If you thought if you thought the kid was going to bring the easy questions, you're on the wrong podcast.
This is Grayson show, damn it. You're just a co-host.
Yeah, well, maybe Ngozi will quit canceling and come on if she knows he's on here. She stood me up 2 times.
I'm a huge basketball fan, like huge. I mean, like old school, back Jordan, Shaq, huge basketball fan. And I always use this analogy that when you are working together, even if you're not working together, you're a husband and wife, you're a team, right? And you have to support each other in the team. I always tell my husband, like when the Warriors won the championship, there was a bunch of players who never played, but they still got the ring. So I always tell my husband that. I'm like, I want to be one of those players who sit on the bench. I'm going to cheer you on. I'm going to do whatever I got to do because I know if you win, I win. And that's how it is too when you are a couple. You can't say, hey, this is his stuff or this is her stuff. You have to see it as a team because when one win, we all win. So I always look at it, I'm always using it as a championship. Even if you may not be in the same industry, but hey, the fact that you could be the only person who support that person can come and have a bad day. And then they come home and you're like, oh, you didn't bring the money. You didn't do this, you didn't do that. You're like, how was your day? Oh, do you need me to help you file this? Do you want me to make this call for you? Like, there's simple things that you can do to help your spouse out because at the end of the day, we all get in that championship ring.
Yeah, I think that's really important. But, you know, again, here's what I want you guys to understand about what people outside of the mobile office and outside of One Way Insurance Group see. We see a couple that is very visible, that is literally laughing and having fun together all the time. All the time. And, you know, I've seen everything from bringing the young ladies in a couple of weeks ago and doing a TikTok video with them to standing on the rotating video thing, dancing around, you know, just being crazy, right? But when you think about the insurance industry, that's not what people perceive or view. That is literally changing the perception of an industry one post at a time. And you're doing that. You're doing that, whether you realize it or not, you are doing that. People are going to see that and they're going to be like, wow, that looks, they're having fun. What are they doing? Hold on. What's that? What's that? That's a mobile office? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
You know, how's that guy dressed so smooth, man? I didn't know a guy from Haiti could even dress like that. You know, my guy's always G'd up wearing the white pants and the red jacket, or the blue pants and the red jacket. Like, I see it all, brother. I see every bit of it. But I want you to know that, because you need that reassurance, because I understand how much